If you felt like American politics has become completely unrecognizable lately, well, you definitely aren't alone. Let's jump right into this explainer. Today we're unpacking a highly provocative thesis from conservative political commentator and historian Victor Davis Hanson. He is making a massive, sweeping claim about the state of modern American politics, specifically looking at the political left. His big argument? The traditional party of figures like FDR, Harry Truman, and JFK. It's gone. Like completely gone forever. And in its place, he sees something entirely different, something he actually traces back hundreds of years. Just listen to this bold assertion he makes. There is no more Democratic Party, it's really a Jacobin party. Now, we are going to impartially break down this thesis. We're going to use his historical comparisons to see exactly how he frames today's political landscape. And look, whether you agree with his politics or not, understanding the historical lens he's using here is absolutely fascinating. It's crucial for understanding how today's deep political divides are being defined by those on the right. To make sense of this argument without taking any sides, here's our roadmap. We'll look at the end of the old Democrats, define who the original Jacobins were, examine some radical policy shifts, dive into allegations of political violence, and finally, look at what he calls the wealthy socialist elite.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the end of old Democrats.
Hanson paints a very specific picture here. He says the old 20th century party was focused on what he calls an equality of result. You know, it wasn't Marxist. It just believed in big government, generous entitlements, and supporting unions. He even credits them for tossing out their historical baggage to lead the 1960s civil rights movement. But today, he argues that old organization has been entirely replaced by a movement obsessed with radical reinvention. His claim is that the new iteration completely abandons those past norms, pushing instead for radical wealth redistribution and a total upending of traditional American values.
So, that brings us to Section 2. Who were the Jacobins?
To understand his point, we gotta know our history. The original Jacobins were a radical political group that, according to this thesis, essentially hijacked the 1789 French Revolution. They literally met in a Dominican monastery, took the name Jacobin, and decided a constitutional monarchy was just a complete sellout. They didn't want reform, they wanted total destruction. To usher in what they called a year zero, they attacked organized religion, destroyed property, and toppled statues. Tragically, they're most famous for the Reign of Terror, where they executed thousands of people via the guillotine just for being labeled counter-revolutionary. And here is where Hanson draws a direct A to B parallel. The French Jacobins of 1789 were fiercely anti-monarchy and secular. Today's new Jacobins, he argues, mirror that exact mindset. He sees them as secular humanists demanding radical wealth redistribution and rejecting tradition. It's a really heavy comparison. He's essentially suggesting the modern left views the world as something that needs to be completely reinvented from scratch, a lot like that infamous year zero.
Moving right along to Section 3, radical shifts in policy.
Hanson argues the policy shifts over just the last 30 years are staggering. Think back to the 1990s. Platforms championed by Bill Clinton actually focused on balancing the budget and strictly enforcing immigration laws. By 1996, the party's stance on abortion was that it should be safe, legal, and rare. Fast forward to 2024, and Hanson asserts the modern party demands abortion on demand. Plus, he claims traditional class concerns have been swapped out for diversity, equity, and inclusion, fixating on race in a way he believes goes against Martin Luther King Jr.'s original dream. Basically, he's saying the mainstream policies of the 90s would be labeled racist or fascist by today's standards.
To back this up, let's look at the numbers. 53 million. That's the number of foreign-born individuals currently in the U.S. To Hanson, this record 16% of the population isn't just some administrative policy failure. No, he argues it's an intentional, Jacobin idea designed to permanently alter American demography. He points to the millions of recent border crossings as evidence of a deliberate, calculated strategy.
Then there's the striking contrast in energy policy. 14 million barrels of oil. Hanson credits conservatives and the Trump administration with reaching that massive production level. On the flip side, he claims the new Jacobins hold an almost religious ideology against fossil fuels. In his view, if their agenda had been fully realized, the nation would literally be bankrupt right now from suppressing domestic energy, especially while rival nations like China and India are out there building new coal plants every single month.
Let's transition to Section 4, allegations of political violence. Hanson explicitly labels this new movement as a violent party, and he points to a few key events to make his case. He calls out social media rhetoric that allegedly mocked the assassination attempts on Donald Trump. He points to protests where grown adults threw items at federal ICE officers.
He also argues that having 600 sanctuary cities operates in the exact spirit of the old Confederacy, basically picking and choosing which federal laws to obey. Finally, he references targeted attacks on conservative figures like Charlie Kirk and that horrific baseball field shooting against House leadership. To Hanson, these aren't just isolated incidents, they're symptoms of a deeply ingrained Jacobin mindset.
This brings us to our final pillar, Section 5, the wealthy socialist elite. There is a fascinating historical irony at play here. The original architects of the Reign of Terror, like the Robespierre brothers, they weren't struggling peasants. They were wealthy, highly educated products of the French aristocracy. Today's influencers, Hanson argues, are exactly the same. They're multi-millionaires touring elite universities like Harvard and Stanford, flying around on private jets, all while preaching a socialist revolution from a position of immense, undeniable privilege.
He actually names specific figures to highlight this contradiction. For instance, he targets Hassan Piker as a Porsche-driving, multimillionaire influencer who poses as a communist on the barricades. He notes politician Zoran Mamdani for his wealthy upbringing, calling him out for protesting a hospital that received a massive financial endowment. He brings up Ilhan Omar over disputed claims regarding a $30 million net worth. And he points to prominent socialists like AOC and Bernie Sanders, criticizing the hypocrisy of using private jets to fly to their rallies.
Hanson uses some incredibly stark rhetoric when talking about this. Speaking on influencers like Piker, he warns that this modern subset believes they can simply pick enemies of the people. No trial, no cross-examination. Just name them and then execute them with impunity. He's arguing that in this new mindset, arbitrary enemies can be named and destroyed without consequence, and that the broader political establishment just turns a blind eye to this extreme rhetoric.
Bringing it all together, Hanson's ultimate warning is that this movement fundamentally dislikes the United States, at least as it was envisioned over the last 250 years. Their goal, according to him, is to redirect the entire course of Western civilization into a massive welfare state governed by these radical Jacobin principles. For anyone watching the daily friction in our politics, this theory definitely offers a provocative lens into the deeper ideological motivations potentially at play.
So, we arrive at the ultimate question. We've walked through the historical comparison of the 1789 French Revolution to today's political left. We've seen his arguments regarding policy shifts, alleged violence, and the extreme wealth of modern socialist figures. If the traditional party of the 20th century really is gone forever, what does this historical parallel mean for the future of American political stability? Are we heading toward a radical reinvention, or is this just the fiery rhetoric of a deeply divided nation? We'll leave you to ponder how these divides are shaping our modern political landscape. Thanks for joining us for this explainer.